Hey, thanks for joining the conversation of Wolf's Watch. I'm Wolf. Today, the big headline is 7.5% inflation. Consumer inflation is at the highest since 1982. It's 40 years, 40-year high. Unbelievable. It's looking like we're headed for a replay of the 1970s, if you remember that. Not a good thing. We've got the Federal Reserve has already announced there's going to be an interest rate increase, an interest rate hike in March. That's going to add more pressure, more upward pressure on prices because the cost of money is going to go up. It's just crazy, isn't it? I mean, a year ago, we were being told, hey, don't worry, Washington, the feds, the economics experts, oh, don't worry, this is just going to be transient inflation because the economy is heating up after all of the pent up energy from the government forced COVID lockdowns, during the great lockdown. Well, guess what? Here we are a year later, and it's gotten worse. It's still with us. It's getting worse, trending worse. And we have a Harvard economist saying that look at this continue through the end of 2023. Imagine that, 2023. So how are you preparing for this? Because if we have a replay of the 1970s or 1970s, early 80s, we're headed for a recession that's even worse than the global financial crisis of 2008, 2009. We had a recession. If you're old enough to remember, if not, go back and dig through the data. When you look at the numbers, this will hold true. It wasn't as long as didn't last as long as the GFC from 2009, but it was way deeper. It was more severe, and that's how you're going to prepare your business for that. You're going to have a lot of competitors stumbling. It's putting a lot of pressure on your customers, your clients. So what are you doing? I'm going to put my glasses on because I got some notes I want to share with you. So here's something else too. So this report, this is the monthly Bureau of Labor Statistics numbers. We've talked about some of the things to be aware of and how numbers from the federal government, from BLS, are put together. So this is before the numbers get adjusted to account for what the federal government considers to be just normal seasonal trends. So the picture may change. Let's stick with the preliminary because just a straighter calculation has not been massaged as much as data analysts will call it. So 7.5%. Food, which is a major consumer impact, is 7%. But get this, energy is 27%. So that's like gas heating for the home. Gasoline, as you've seen at the pump, right, is getting crazy, and oil prices are at nearly $100, just shy of $100 a barrel, which we haven't seen for a decade. And this has spiked very recently, with the interest rate change coming, long-term inflation, as we've been talking about since midsummer last year. Be prepared for that because how's it going to affect your customers' behavior, your clients' spending behavior? How are you connecting with them? And don't want to make this, we don't do gloom and doom on Wolf's Watch. Can't ignore reality, right? This is really creating a lot of problems business-wise. So beware and be ready. Perhaps you've already prepared for it. You're making sure that you are more cost efficient, right? So you're getting costs down, getting fixed costs controlled, increasing your margins, and expanding your sales and customer base at the same time. You got to be doing those two things. With this rate of inflation, especially as it continues to go higher, if it does go higher, internal cost control isn't going to just be enough. You really need to have strong margins and growing margins to keep ahead of the inflation, because the inflation eats away. It's like locusts, eats away at your profits, eats away your customers' profits. Your supply chain has more problems because what do? They got to pass along the cost increase. Everybody's under the same challenge. So here's some things to do. Value is key. How do you do cost control? So you look at what is it that directly what directly contributes to value in your client's eyes. What is it that they need is solving their problem? And do cost control around that. Reorganize how you're delivering value around that, rather than, you may be getting big enough with your company, 20, 30, 50 people. You're starting to get some of the silo activities that are that happen. Well, look at how you can innovate in terms of the relationships between people, the process. Sorry, I just dropped something here. Uh, on the process so that you're focused more on value delivery, not on classical hierarchical command and control. Doesn't work as well. And if you've been remote, as so many have, with remote workers, and you're thinking about bringing them back in, why would you do that? Right? If you do not rely on remote work where you can, right? Some things just cannot be handled remotely. You cannot fix a stop toilet by remote control, from over a Zoom session. But some things can be handled that way. If you do not handle what can be done remote, why aren't you? If you have managers on your team that need to have people in where they can see them so that they can manage them, you need to work with them. Right? That's not just a best practice. It's no longer a viable practice to say, look, we need to have everybody come in just because we got everybody here. No, don't do that. Your competitors may be doing that. And if they are, it gives you a strategic advantage. If you're not, because you're more flexible, you're controlling your cost, and you're expanding your reach on where you can recruit the best talent. Even if it's just within your state where your primary state of doing business, you can still reach farther across the state. If you can expand that nationally, then you can reach across the country to get the best people, recruit the best people for your business. If you're making it necessary to be on site, so have people come together just for being together, and your competitor's not, guess what? They got an advantage over you. You don't want that. So be looking at leverage what's working, what the best practices are, what's been most viable. Do more of that. Big way to cut costs is to cut footprint on what you need for least space, right? Real estate's incredibly expensive and getting more expensive. So it's just a couple of things on cost control. But now what are you doing on the other side, on the top line? How are you expanding your revenue, your sales, and at the same time, maintaining or expanding margins? Let's not waste time talking about maintaining margins. Let's expand margins. How do you do that? Well, are you building the relationship with your customers? How are you building a deeper relation with your customers? How are you better understanding what they need so that you can either innovate new services or bundle in a way that allows you to provide something at a higher cost with a better margin, because you're giving them more value, making their lives easier. They can justify. If you don't have that relationship with them, you're leaving the door open for someone else to innovate and take those customers away, and they will with these kind of pressures. It's normal competition when you get high interest or high inflation like this, and then start bringing in increases in interest rates. Competition is going to heat up. More businesses are falling by the wayside. Are you scooping up their clients, the ones that make sense for your business? Don't just bring in everybody to keep the doors open. Sometimes we got to do that, right? I've been there. Not a viable long-term strategy, especially not in this economic environment. You need to go, and just like you need to recruit the best talent for your business rather than just hiring, doing a cattle call hiring, knowing what you need in talent, you need to know what you need in customers and pursue recruiting the best customers as well, especially when there has been such a dramatic increase in business failures as a result of the great lockdown, the government's response to the pandemic, and now with what we're seeing with this, with the craziness in the economy. So bundling is one way to do that. Moving up market, where are you in your market niche? Are you serving a premium market, or are you trying to be a Walmart? Right? There's two places to be right now. Commodity, which is almost no margin, and you're competing with companies that have huge resources, right? The whole thing about Amazon and Walmart and these big companies, now it's Amazon and Google and the online companies that are putting the local businesses out of place, local brick and mortar. How do you compete with that? Premium niches, better service. So there's always, every market has multiple niches for premium service, premium products, premium customer experience. Focus on the customer experience. How do you make the customer experience something so unique, so highly valued that people will pay you a premium for what you're providing because of the experience they have with your company? A lot of that revolves around how good you are at telling the story for why you're in business, what you're doing, what your clients are becoming part of when they are your client versus the company down the street or the company in another remote location over the internet. So just a couple of quick tips. And the thing about this today is National Home Warranty Day. Isn't that just an exciting, compelling thing? I'm sorry. I saw that and it's like, what a bold, blatant marketing ploy. But you know what? It at least gets it out there on radar and creates a lot of media discussion about, hey, this is what this is. Gives the companies in that doing business in that space something to talk about. How can you leverage the National Day of craze? And there's 4, 5, 6 National Day of things every single day. Perhaps you can get something created for your business specifically, like the home warranty business did. And there's actually a National Home Warranty Company. So imagine that. Imagine the media exposure that they get from that, just because people will be going, oh, that's interesting. And they, or suddenly they're going, I'm a homeowner, need to find out more about this, or they let their warranty lapse, or they hadn't thought about it for a while since they bought their house. How can you leverage that in your marketing, in your relationship building with your customers and your prospective customers? So something to look into. Always like to look at what's been happening on this day in history too. So I want to close with, on this day in history, Glenn Miller Band earned the first ever Gold Album Award for selling 1 million copies of Chattanooga Choo Choo. There's a swing era, truly golden oldie. So that was in 1940. Well, let me check my notes here. Don't want to get this wrong. It was in 1942. So during World War II, Glenn Miller Band won the first ever gold record award. So imagine that, a million copies of Chattanooga Choo Choo. And at that time, the population of the U.S. was only 134 million, almost 135 million people. Today, it's over 332 million. So imagine selling 1 million units of anything, especially 1 million records in that environment with such a smaller sales base than we have today. There's so much more opportunity today. And sadly, this was just a couple years before, 2 years before Glenn Miller was killed during World War II. And actually, it was unfortunately a friendly fire situation. Was flying over the English Channel, and a mission had been scrubbed. And this is the best data. There's been a lot of mystery about what happened. Best research has indicated that here's what happened. His plane was flying across the English Channel, and he was in the military at the time, working, doing what he did best with his band, helping with morale and keeping troops entertained, but actually as part of the military, the Army, and was flying across the English Channel, coming back from it's either flying to or flying from a gig they were going to do, a gig in Europe, and a mission had been scrubbed, a bombing rate had been scrubbed, and as the bombers were returning at a much higher altitude than his plane was flying, they dumped their payload because to have so many planes come back in fully loaded with bombs could be catastrophic, and didn't want to risk having one of the planes crash in a civilian area, in one of the cities in Britain. Excuse me. And unfortunately, those bombs took out the plane that Glenn Miller was flying in. Only 2.5 years, a little over, not quite 3 years, because that happened in December or in February. So less than 3 years later, we lost Glenn Miller. A lot of tragedies like that. Tragedies happen in life. What's going on in the economy right now is not so slowly unfolding as a tragedy, but you can refuse to be part of the inflation and be prepared to recession-proof your business as much as possible. Yeah. Well, thanks for being part of the conversation. I'm Wolf. This is Wolf's Watch, and I look forward to seeing you on the trail.